Hey guys, this is Ricardo with Gathering Magic, and I am here at Pro Tour Atlanta, here with Ian Duke, to go ahead and talk about Vintage Masters. Can you go ahead and just tell me a little bit about yourself before we start?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Ian Duke. I've been with Wizards R&D for almost 2 years now. I served on the Journey into Nyx development team, so I'm pretty excited to be here at the Pro Tour. And I was also the lead developer of Vintage Masters, and I've been working on a couple other projects that are in the pipeline right now, but you guys will be hearing about them pretty soon.
So not tonight, but maybe later.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So how long have you been on the developing team?
Let's see, it's just under 2 years now. I would say I started as an intern in August 2012. Interns typically stay interns for about 6 to 9 months or so, and then I was hired full-time after that.
Awesome. And can you tell just maybe some of the newer people, what exactly is Vintage Masters?
So Vintage Masters is our method of releasing the Power 9 for the first time on Magic Online. Previously, they hadn't appeared there. And originally, it was sort of just a blue skies. We want to get these cards onto Magic Online, but we don't necessarily have a picture of exactly how we're going to do it. Around the time when Modern Masters came out in the real world, we got a lot of positive feedback on how awesome that draft format was. And at that point, we realized we could do a similar thing with Vintage Masters. So we set out to create a set that captured all the nostalgia of early Magic, re-released a lot of the staple cards for Vintage and for Legacy, but especially for Vintage, but was also an awesome draftable format and a great experience as well.
Awesome, awesome. Now, as far as developing this, what exactly have you brought to the table as far as developing Vintage Masters?
In terms of my personal skill set?
Yeah, well, everybody brings their own little toolkit to the table.
Yeah, so I guess for me, just my love of Eternal formats helped a lot. I was super excited, jumped at the opportunity to lead this set, just because ever since I was a kid and I started playing Magic, I guess around the time when Ice Age came out, I was always infatuated with these older cards. I'd go to my local card shop and see cards from Arabian Nights and Antiquities and Beta, and I wanted to own them. They were so mysterious and unique and just had this aura about them. So I'd always try to trade backwards for these older cards, and in doing so, I grew to really love those older formats, and throughout my course as a Magic, my career as a Magic player, I played a lot of Legacy, a lot of Vintage, so I really, really love those formats.
What was your reaction when they told you that you'd be lead developer?
Just super excited, both not knowing where to start, but also just being excited to jump into the opportunity and having a lot of space to play around there. So
that's something else. I couldn't imagine having to deal with the older formats. I too I've been playing for a long time, so ever since I was a kid. The first deck I got, I didn't even know what those cards were. I was just like, right. Yeah, Crozen Drover and Crozen Beast, this is going to be awesome. So as far as now, I of course know what all that stuff is, but what kind of impact do you think this is going to have on the community for the Vintage community online?
Well, we're hoping it gives an opportunity for players who love Vintage to be able to play through Magic Online through the convenience of their own home, to find opponents more easily, more conveniently, more quickly, and also to grow the Vintage community too. I think that there are a lot of players who have access to Magic Online but don't necessarily have access to these older, difficult to find cards, and this will be a way for them to experience the format for the first time, or for the 20th year of their career as Vintage players, but through a new medium.
Awesome. And there's going to be a lot of alternate art on some of these cards, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Some cube art, some new commissions for this set, just a variety of alternate art, some new, some old.
Okay. What would you say was your biggest challenge in having to develop this set?
Definitely just that Magic was a lot different and I guess a lot less polished during the early years. There were differences in the color pie. For example, green was really the only color that got big creatures at common. If you look at like white, you're really hard pressed to find creatures above 2/2, 3/3 in size at common. So finding those cards to make a balanced limited environment was a little bit of a challenge, but one that we were ultimately able to overcome through creative selection of cards and also some pretty cool rarity shifts. So you expect to see a lot of cards that were shifted up or down in rarities in order to balance out the format, and I think that's one of the exciting parts about Vintage Masters. Another aspect that was a challenge is in the early days, spells, instants, and sorceries were much, much more powerful than creatures. On the one hand, you had spells like Swords to Plowshares being commonplace. On the other hand, one of Red's very best creatures was Ironclaw Orcs. So these two things are not really balanced in the same way that we'd expect in modern Magic. So it was really taking this older card pool and applying modern development principles to it.
Okay, and as a lot of players are a little confused sometimes between developing and designing. Yeah. Can you shed a little light on the differences there?
Yeah, great question. One of the common questions we get for those of us in R&D. So in a typical set, design focuses on sort of like blue sky, what is this set all about? Let's design some cool cards, let's figure out what the mechanics are going to be, and generally set the architecture of the set. Afterwards, development comes in and really focuses on balance issues, focuses on mana costs, power level, and getting the format to be a fun limited environment, a fun constructed environment. So it's really sort of like, just sort of blue skies designing the cards and then into like a power balancing type development process.
Okay. And as far as, because this is all going to be reprints, what was your approach to designing developing a full set of mostly pretty much all reprints?
Well, let's see. We knew we wanted to bring back a lot of the nostalgic cards that players would expect and would want to play with again, or play with for the first time in some cases, but we wanted to remix them in a way that felt new and fresh. So that meant picking and choosing different mechanics and different themes from different blocks, but mixing them together in a really interesting and new way. So one of the things I talked about in my article that went up on the website last week is how we arrived at Red having a goblin sub-theme strategy as just one of the possible things Red can do. And in doing so, we were able to mix and match the Onslaught goblins with some goblins from earlier in Magic's history, and also some goblins from Plane Chase and Portal 2. So there's really a lot of cool cards mixed together in a new way that you've never seen before.
You know, what's funny is you can go to most card shops nowadays and you find somebody that's yeah, I kind of know a little bit about Magic, and you explain to them what Portal is, they just completely like it never happened.
Right.
They don't even know what it is. So something like this is definitely going to be more or less a shock to them as far as them being an online Magic player. Because I'm sure a lot of Magic players are like, oh, Vintage, only people that are, they've got tons of money will be able to afford that format. But now you're making a whole reprint. I could only imagine it's going to make everything a lot better for everybody.
Yeah,
so that's
our goal
really
is
great.
definitely to make the cards more accessible and to foster more of a community online. But there still will be, there will be rarity associated with these cards.
Yeah.
They will be collectible, absolutely. So we anticipate players, wanting to build up a collection and have access to all these cards that can play their favorite format.
Awesome. Well, I am shy on thinking of any kind of questions that I could ask you. You pretty much answered everything. But as a developer, I could only assume that that's your thing. You have to make sure that you answer every in and out. Has anybody actually come up to you today with any questions as far as anybody here at the Pro Tour?
Not so much today. The focus has been mostly on Journey into Nyx, and rightfully so. But after we move through this Pro Tour in the coming weeks, I think there's going to be a lot of excitement building for Vintage Masters. And just want to say, the format turned out really fun. It's really exciting. The people in R&D who playtested the format have told me that it turned out approximately as fun or even more fun than Modern Masters. It was definitely one of the most anticipated playtests we had each week in R&D. So hopefully it turns out as well as we expect.
That is awesome to hear. Well, I'm very happy that we had the opportunity to interview you. You've been a pool of knowledge. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right, everybody here at Gathering Magic, thank you so much for watching.